Let's talk about some other people who are no longer with us. Jonathan Luna, not a household name, Assistant U.S. Attorney in Baltimore, Maryland. He was found stabbed to death off the Pennsylvania Turnpike 36 times, stabbed to death with his own penknife, and found drowned in a creek. The police ruled it a suicide. Jonathan Luna was investigating corruption in the state of Maryland, the Republican administration, and he tied it to Jack Abramoff. And why is Jack Abramoff important? If any of you are familiar with the work of Dan Hopsicker down in Florida, you'll know that 2 of those hijackers were cited by Mohammed Atta's girlfriend. He got it right from her on Jack Abramoff's casino boat in Madeira Beach, Florida, a couple of days before 9/11. Okay, that wasn't in the 9/11 Commission report. There are so many things left uninvestigated that what you're trying to do here in New York is just going to open up a can of worms, and that needs to be opened. You know why George Bush, he hates New York City. He hates New Orleans. He hates Boston. You know why? Because he looked at that electoral map and he says, "They didn't vote for me. They're not my people." But you can really make him hate you if you get this ballot initiative through, because he will hate you, because then this could open up the necessary mechanisms to put George Bush and Dick Cheney and that entire bunch of neocons and PNAC people in prison where they belong. And not only do we owe it to the 3,000 Americans that died on 9/11, here's another important aspect. To find out who was really responsible for 9/11 will be also to find out who was responsible for getting this country into a bloody quagmire in Iraq and Afghanistan that has cost over 4,000 American military dead, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, 100,000 Afghans, and that we owe to all those innocent people who have died as well. So it's beyond. You could do what happened in Nuremberg after the Second World War and bring these war criminals to justice. There's so many other things I want to talk about. The other thing is, other than what happened on September 11th, I talked about historical precedent. Look also back to what happened in 1993, the first time the World Trade Center was hit. That's important too, because there was critical evidence suppressed during that investigation. And who was mostly responsible for that suppression? Michael Chertoff, who was the U.S. Attorney over in New Jersey, and this guy who gets much too much credit, Patrick Fitzgerald, who led the investigation here in Manhattan. These 2 people should be called to testify, not as friendly witnesses, they won't be friendly witnesses, but they should be called to testify at any commission that holds hearings here in New York. Also, look at American Airlines 587. We were told it broke up and crashed into Rockaway Beach because a Japan Airlines 747 had taken off and there was still some turbulence in the air. Nonsense. Look at what the Canadian Security Intelligence Service had about that. They said that it was likely that there was a shoe bomber on board that aircraft that actually succeeded, where the guy that was on the one flying to Miami from Paris failed. That's important too. The anthrax attacks. That affected New York because anthrax was sent to the corporate media here. You would think they would have been a little bit more concerned about investigating what happened to them. But when's the last time you heard anything about the anthrax investigation? That's a bioterrorism attack. And we hear nothing, absolutely nothing about the anthrax attacks. Also, I have my own anecdote. There was a press conference, the Kane-Hamilton Commission down in Washington, and Tom Kane was there talking. I put my hand up during this press conference. I said, "Governor, what about these stock put options. The FBI in the previous week said, "No, we looked into it, there's nothing there." They said it's off the table. I said, "Is it off the table as far as you're concerned, Governor?" He said, "No, no, I consider everything's on the table, including that." And okay, that's good news. And then Lee Hamilton, so-called the Democrat vice chairman, said all of a sudden he got all puffy and he said, puffed up, he says, I reject the premise of your question." It's not a question. It happened. And now they cry. They say, "Oh, they were lied to," and all this other stuff. I mean, it's actually pathetic. Somebody mentioned Phil Zelikow, this guy, the perception management guy, the guy who believes in fantasy. It's also important to point out, Phil Zelikow had his academic background mostly at a place called the Miller Institute at the University of Virginia. And what are they most infamous for? Most of their work has been to debunk anyone who questions the Warren Commission report over the assassination of President Kennedy. What in the world was this guy allowed anywhere near this 9/11 Commission? Because as we all know, anyone who has any ounce of common sense, Lee Harvey Oswald was not the lone gunman. It's arguable whether he actually got any shots off in the direction of President Kennedy, but they put this character, Zelikow, in as the executive director. International outreach is important. You get this commission, not only will you have more than enough people from our own intelligence, law enforcement, military services to help out. There are foreign intelligence agencies. We heard about the former president of Italy. This guy said he absolutely knows what happened, and he's very close to NATO. But people from France, from Germany, even countries you would not even think about. Libya. Do you know Libya had the first Interpol arrest warrant, red notice issued for Osama bin Laden? Why? Because bin Laden was trying to kill Gaddafi. Gaddafi has an intelligence service. He was collecting all kinds of information. That information would likely be made available as well. The new Pakistani government, not Musharraf, the new government, the Bhutto, Benazir Bhutto's former party, they have a lot of information. Especially, it'd be interesting, what was all about, what was that $100,000 wired to Muhammad Atta from the ISI of Pakistan? This government is a lot more friendly in Pakistan than the previous ones. Tariq Aziz, the former foreign minister of Iraq, now imprisoned by the United States. Why? Because he knows too much. They don't want Aziz going out there telling everybody about what Iraq knew. Saddam Hussein hated al-Qaeda, but he also knew about the Saudi connection to al-Qaeda. The Iranian government knew about the Saudi connection to al-Qaeda. This is the kind of information that George Bush and Dick Cheney never want to ask. They don't want this information seeing the light of day. But it's very important that this outreach be done. This information is out there, probably from about 45 countries, intelligence services, law enforcement agencies, and military. Also, let's not forget about the various contractors. There's a lot of military, government contractors. These individuals have been whistleblowers. Many have been fired. They have information as well. Civilian employees, State Department people. There's just so many people out there with information. Let's look at the former Enron people who knew all about the deal to put that Central Asian gas pipeline through Afghanistan and the negotiations with the Taliban, knowing full well that the Taliban was giving sanctuary to Osama bin Laden. There's a lot of people that used to work for Enron. I'd be more than happy to let this commission know what was happening back in the late 90s.